Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to an overview of Nordhold. So if you're not across it, I flip-flop between formats. I'm thinking about sort of running both next to each other. I've been doing longer form reviews and less videos, and while that's good and I enjoy doing that sort of commitment, a lot of smaller titles fall through the cracks, right? And I figure I've got a platform, I like shouting out smaller things that maybe I'm not going to put a huge amount of time in, but it would be cool to still put on your radar. Things like early access don't really fall into the model. So here we go, we'll see if maybe this becomes a daily thing as well. But this is my OG format, which is the idea of, I've played this for 2 hours, which is the Steam refund window. Steam says that you can make up your mind about keeping a game in that 2 hours. I think that's a pretty good rule generally, and you're probably not going to change your mind like a couple dozen hours in compared to what you feel in those first few hours. So yeah, I've played a chunk of this Nordhold. It's pretty cool actually, and this is coming from someone that doesn't really like tower defense. I'm not necessarily saying there's something wrong with the genre, but even though I'm a variety gamer and YouTuber, I play just about everything. Tower defense is something that sits on the periphery for me. And I think it's because a lot of the time more misses come out than hits. So this is a hit. And even if you have a look at things like Cataclysmo, which we reviewed recently, these newer long form, I don't know what else to call them, but that was the big problem with Cataclysmo. It was great, it had high fidelity, it was very, very, hands-on and involved, except it becomes bloated. I don't think this genre works on that end of the scale, trying to turn it into a robust, fully formed game. It works on this end of the scale, which is to say Nordhold embraces being more bite-sized, more punchy, more roguelite. It's very just overt in what it's doing. It's a game's game. So it's short and punchy. It has meta progression. The meta progression does gate a lot of your progress, but it doesn't feel egregious because the downtime is, well, there's not really much downtime at all. So you'll find yourself going through a run, flying through it, you'll accrue the meta money, whatever it is, honor, unlock some things. You can unlock them as you go, or you just unlock them at the final screen. It's all very usable and readable, and then bang, off you go to the races, back into the fire. Also, before we get into it proper, it's probably worth pointing out that this is being done by Stunforge. I don't think they've ever done anything before, but it's a 1.0 release, which I think should be celebrated. I'm really fucking sick of early access, just generally speaking. At a certain point, it went from something that's consumer friendly more to a have your cake and eat it to soft launch test from developers where they can use it as an excuse to react and slopify their games a bit to make sure that they don't fail, and we all pay the price potentially when the studio does fail, but I digress. Good for them for going 1.0 for a relatively unknown studio. They're being backed by Money Men Hype Train Digital as publisher, which I like them. They've done some pretty cool out of the box titles, so, to be commended, I think. Okay, so it's a tower defense run-based roguelike. Essentially, you'll go into split gameplay. There's two parts to the gameplay. One is sort of economy, build up, that sort of thing, build buildings, get upgrades, etc. And then you pull the trigger and switch to the tower defense section. Interesting way to kick that off. So you have your, God, I'm using my hands a lot, but you can see it in the footage. You have your sort of segmented base, which is all very set, right? It's more something like the old Heroes of Might and Magic games where you just buy a building and that lives in a specific spot every time, the same space. It's not like you're building on a free grid or anything like that. And then you've got the little path out the front. It's kind of sort of this mega hex, I don't know how else to describe it, and within it, it's got these little spots as well, and they're sort of placed on different terrain levels. Now, I think the first tile is always set, but the ones that you add subsequently are kind of random. I know they're definitely random in their height and the path that goes through them, so that's cool. There's a bit of variety added there. But essentially, at the end of the path, you just hit the explore button and it will add this new chunk tile and pathway for the enemies to come along, and then it goes into that real-time tower defense that you're probably used to. I think it's very clever. So you're not really choosing to place the tiles, but you are lengthening the path each time, which gives you a bit more real estate to build more towers on, and over time per wave it's adding on new creatures, more boss monsters every 10th wave, something like that, right? Pretty standard fare, but I find that fairly unique, the way that it sort of elongates the adding of real estate for the enemy to come through. So it becomes longer, it gives you more area to work with, but you don't really have control over where it winds and waves, and sometimes it'll even double back next to a tile that you've already got unlocked, so you'll have overlap potentially from the high ground places on previous tiles. The economy's good. It's got a bit of interplay. All of this is still fairly light. So in the 2 hours, I wouldn't say I completely solved it. Not at all, right? It's not like I'm top of the leaderboard or anything like that. So there's enough there to keep the cogs turning. I don't know how else to describe it. I don't know if there's a term for it, but the idea of trying to crack a game when it has systems that are interlocking and just working out your system and how to, kind of break it, kind of conquer it, at least from a mechanics perspective. There's enough here to keep you busy. There's sort of like 4 points of income: wood, stone, gold, and food. Each of these will have, like a lumber camp, farms, that sort of thing. And wood's mostly done for general building of everything, so you have to be careful with it. Stone is very much dedicated to towers only. Gold is more like upgrades within buildings and sometimes, used in some towers depending. And then the food is used to get more employees, get more workers. So you slot these workers, I think you can have up to 10. Well, no, you can get more upgrades to get more out of your build. Probably about 15, something like that, not sure. But you slot them to all the different places and you buy these sort of chip upgrades that'll increase gold yield at the gold mine, or you can go to the castle and upgrade taxes across the entire workforce. So yeah, it actually balances it really well because that same money has to go into towers, and the towers have an escalating ramp cost, which sort of messes with my zen personally, but I kind of appreciate what it's doing and how that makes you vary your towers. Like, you can't really just go, I'm only going to have this one tower type, because of the compounding cost for subsequent towers. You can try, and I unlocked some bonus at some point. What was it? It might have been some meta upgrade I got after about 3 runs for like the castle, where if you get like 5 of the same tower, you can generate a big chunk of income. So there is incentive to do stuff like that. But it's definitely trickier, and it makes much more sense to kind of spread yourself around. The level 1 fireball tower is probably like 10 stone, whereas if you buy the 4th one, it's probably like 70 stone or something like that. So it balances out, it spreads you around, and if you try and push back against that status quo, it's going to cost you. So you place your little towers out the front. They've got different terrain heights, and I'm pretty sure there's a randomness to it beyond the first tile. There's all sorts of other, peripheral stuff, which is whatever. Like after a few rounds, you get a hero join you, and that gives you some sort of skill shot abilities. I mean, who really cares? There's the standard sort of, after a wave, you get to choose from 3 upgrades, very roguelite mechanics, and that upgrades your towers. One of the really clever inspired things is you can upgrade those towers individually. You can spend gold, right? Let's say you just built an arrow tower and you can spend 20 gold to upgrade it. Now, you're not going to do that because you need the 20 gold for something else, right? Or whatever you're going to do. Like I said, who knows? Maybe I'm doing it all wrong. But every wave that a tower lives through will reduce that gold cost by something nominal, like $5. So the next wave, it'll only be 15 to upgrade. And so after about 4 runs, for example, your tower will now have a free upgrade, which you can click on. And that's where it gets a bit too fiddly for me. There's like 12 different upgrade things: fire rate, attack, whatever. I don't really care that much. Range. But then you get a free upgrade and it resets that timer. So you put all your towers out, and you can, if you have some sort of big brain strategy that's beyond me, upgrade towers with your own gold. Maybe you do conquer the economy early, but the idea that it ticks down and it eventually gives you a free upgrade, I think it's very clever. It keeps you sort of engaged with that side of the split gameplay loop. And then you get all sorts of meta upgrades, and that ranges from building individual upgrades that will increase yield to new buildings altogether. I've gotten like taverns and breweries, and so there's a pipeline for food to turn that into booze for efficiency, because why not? Which makes sense, because the food mechanic, once you buy all the villages, what are you going to do with it? Well, then you could have feasts at the tavern and that. So there's a lot there. There's enough there to keep you busy. So yeah, all things considered, it's not something I'm probably going to review or anything like that, but I thought, hey look, I had a couple of hours, I'd give it a go, put it on your radar, let you know what it's all about. If you're into these sort of things, it's probably a must buy. It's polished, it's clever, it knows what it's doing. I think it's fairly well realized for what it should be, which is a lighter tower defense roguelite type game. So yeah, check it out. Otherwise, I might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.